There are moments in certain relationships when reality feels unstable. One part of you believes you're deeply connected to someone. Another part notices patterns of harm, control, or inconsistency that don't align with the idea of a healthy bond. This internal conflict is not just emotional, it's psychological. It's a process known as cognitive dissonance. This video explores how trauma bonding, a powerful emotional attachment formed through cycles of abuse and reward, creates deep mental tension that can make people question their perception, memory, and even their sense of self. The contradiction between what's experienced and what's believed leads to confusion, anxiety, and a profound sense of being stuck. Understanding cognitive dissonance within trauma bonding doesn't just explain why someone might stay in a harmful relationship. It sheds light on how the mind tries to survive conflicting truths. We're going to break down the psychological mechanisms at play, where they come from, and how they shape behavior. By the end of this video, you'll have a clearer understanding of how trauma bonding works, why it distorts perception, and what steps can help restore clarity. This isn't about judgment, it's about insight and awareness. Cognitive dissonance is a psychological phenomenon where a person holds two or more conflicting beliefs, values, or perceptions at the same time, leading to internal stress or discomfort. It's not simply confusion, it's a mental state where the mind struggles to make two opposing truths exist together. In the context of trauma bonding, cognitive dissonance often sounds like, "I know they hurt me, but I also believe they love me. I feel unsafe, but I think I should stay." These contradictions aren't easy to resolve. The human mind is wired to seek internal consistency. When beliefs or experiences clash, the brain looks for a way to reduce the discomfort. That might mean minimizing the harm that's happening, rationalizing the abuser's behavior, or questioning one's own memory and judgment. Over time, this leads to distorted thinking patterns that prioritize emotional survival over objective truth. The more invested someone is in a relationship, emotionally, financially, or psychologically, the stronger the pull to resolve dissonance in a way that preserves the bond, even if that means rejecting or suppressing painful facts. This is especially true in trauma bonds, where the bond was often formed during or around moments of intense vulnerability. Gaslighting, which involves manipulating someone into doubting their perception of reality, further complicates cognitive dissonance. When an abuser denies something clearly hurtful or reframes it as care, it feeds the victim's uncertainty and increases reliance on the abuser's version of reality. Cognitive dissonance doesn't mean a person is weak or unaware. It's a natural response to overwhelming emotional conflict. When someone is caught between their lived experience and their emotional attachment to another person, dissonance becomes a way to cope. Understanding this concept is critical to recognizing how trauma bonds are maintained. The pressure to resolve conflicting beliefs, "they love me" versus "they harm me," often leads to internal compromises that preserve the relationship at the cost of mental clarity. This split in perception is not madness. It is a response to inconsistency, and it can be reversed. The first step is naming it, seeing the dissonance for what it is. From there, a more grounded and consistent understanding of reality can begin to take shape. Trauma bonding doesn't form through constant abuse. It forms through a cycle, a pattern of repeated highs and lows that create emotional dependence. This pattern is known as the abuse reinforcement cycle, and it plays a central role in maintaining toxic or abusive relationships. The cycle typically begins with idealization. This is when the abuser showers the other person with attention, affection, or promises. The relationship feels intense and meaningful. Trust is built quickly, and emotional walls begin to drop. This phase creates a powerful attachment, often mistaken for love or compatibility. Then comes devaluation, a shift in tone where criticism, withdrawal, or emotional coldness begins to surface. This may be followed by more overt forms of abuse, manipulation, blame, verbal attacks, or even physical aggression. It can feel sudden, confusing, and out of character, which adds to the emotional shock. After the abuse, there's usually a reconciliation phase. The abuser may apologize, offer justifications, or show affection again. This reactivation of warmth creates relief. The emotional pain from the previous phase is soothed, not by resolution but by temporary validation. That relief reinforces the bond. This cycle repeats. Over time, the brain starts associating the abuser with both pain and relief. The unpredictable switching between hurt and comfort creates what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement, one of the most powerful conditioning tools in human behavior. It's the same principle used in gambling addiction. The reward doesn't come every time, but it comes just enough to keep you invested. This pattern causes emotional confusion. The brain becomes focused on getting back to the good version of the person, the one from the idealization phase, while minimizing or rationalizing the harm that follows. As a result, the cycle becomes self-reinforcing. The more it continues, the harder it becomes to separate the abusive behavior from the occasional affection. Importantly, the abuse reinforcement cycle is not always obvious. It doesn't always involve physical violence. Emotional manipulation, guilt-tripping, or even passive-aggressive withdrawal can follow the same pattern. Recognizing the cycle for what it is, a behavioral loop, not a reflection of love, is a key step in understanding trauma bonding. The emotional attachment isn't a failure of judgment. It's the predictable result of repeated conditioning over time. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation where someone causes another person to question their memory, perception, or judgment. In the context of trauma bonding, gaslighting plays a critical role in deepening the cognitive dissonance and weakening a person's ability to trust themselves. It often begins subtly: a denial of something that was said, a shifting of blame, or a reframing of past events. Over time, these moments accumulate. The person being gaslit starts second-guessing their instincts. They may begin to think they're overreacting, being too sensitive, or misremembering things entirely. In abusive dynamics, this erosion of self-trust becomes strategic. When someone can no longer rely on their own thoughts or feelings, they often turn to the abuser for guidance, the very person distorting their reality. This creates dependence and makes emotional escape feel nearly impossible. Gaslighting doesn't always look dramatic. It can be delivered through calm explanations, gentle corrections, or statements masked as concern. But the result is the same. The person starts feeling disoriented and unsure of what's real. This confusion feeds directly into cognitive dissonance, because if you can't trust your own perspective, you're more likely to accept contradictions or explain away harm. The long-term effect is a breakdown of internal stability. Self-doubt becomes chronic. Even small decisions feel overwhelming. In this state, questioning the relationship feels not only difficult, but unsafe. Understanding gaslighting as a manipulation tactic, not a reflection of your capacity to perceive truth, is essential. Rebuilding self-trust is possible, but it starts by recognizing that the distortion wasn't yours to begin with. The problem wasn't your sensitivity or your memory. It was the systematic undermining of your reality. Leaving a trauma bond is rarely a simple decision. From the outside, it may seem like walking away is the logical choice. But for someone inside the bond, the situation is far more complex. Emotional, psychological, and even physiological factors create a powerful pull that makes separation feel deeply conflicted and often unsafe. One major reason is emotional dependency. When love and harm are intertwined, the nervous system becomes conditioned to interpret the relationship as both the source of pain and the source of relief. This makes leaving feel like giving up the only place where comfort might still be possible, even if that comfort is unpredictable or brief. Another barrier is self-doubt, often created by long-term manipulation or gaslighting. Over time, a person may begin to question their judgment, downplay their own needs, or believe that the abuse is somehow their fault. If someone feels responsible for the relationship's dysfunction, they may stay to fix it rather than walk away. Fear of consequences also plays a role. Fear of retaliation, emotional collapse, social isolation, or financial hardship. In some cases, the fear isn't exaggerated. It's real and valid, especially when the abuser has created dependence or made threats. Additionally, past trauma or attachment wounds can unconsciously drive someone to recreate familiar dynamics, even if they're harmful. In this way, trauma bonding isn't just about the present relationship. It may also be tied to unresolved experiences from early life. Leaving a trauma bond isn't just about physical separation. It's about untangling an entire framework of beliefs, fears, and emotional patterns. That process takes time, support, and often outside perspective. Understanding the forces at play can make the path out clearer, and the burden of leaving feel a little less personal. When someone is caught in a trauma bond, cognitive dissonance becomes part of everyday life. It isn't just a moment of confusion, it's a constant internal negotiation. One part of the mind notices the inconsistency, the harm, the instability. Another part insists that things are okay, that there's hope, that the connection is real. This tension creates a mental and emotional split. A person may find themselves alternating between clarity and denial, strength and guilt, certainty and self-blame. The dissonance doesn't just affect thoughts, it shapes feelings, behaviors, and decisions in subtle, often exhausting ways. People in this state often develop coping strategies that prioritize emotional survival. They may minimize incidents, over-focus on the abuser's positive traits, or blame themselves to maintain a sense of control. These strategies are not weaknesses, they are protective responses designed to make the situation feel manageable. The result is emotional fatigue. Living inside dissonance requires constant mental effort. Over time, this can lead to anxiety, depression, difficulty concentrating, and a distorted sense of self. It becomes harder to trust emotions, make decisions, or even recognize what one wants or needs. Externally, life may look functional. Internally, there's a quiet war between truth and loyalty, fear and hope. This is the psychological cost of trauma bonding, not just the moments of conflict, but the daily erosion of clarity. Recognizing this inner split is a step toward resolution. It means the mind is noticing what no longer fits, and that awareness can be the beginning of change. Breaking a trauma bond is not about willpower. It's about awareness, support, and healing. Because the bond is formed through cycles of emotional intensity, inconsistency, and psychological confusion, ending it requires more than simply deciding to leave. It involves undoing patterns that may have been reinforced over months or even years. The first step is recognition. Understanding that the relationship is operating on a cycle of harm and reinforcement, rather than mutual respect, allows the emotional attachment to be viewed through a more honest lens. This shift can be painful, but it's necessary. Creating distance is often essential. For some, this means going no contact. For others, especially in situations involving children or shared responsibilities, a strategy like the grey rock method, limiting emotional engagement, can be a temporary tool for safety and clarity. Healing also involves rebuilding self-trust. That may come through therapy, journaling, or simply practicing small independent decisions. Over time, clarity increases as emotional dependence weakens. Breaking the bond is not a single moment. It's a process of reclaiming perspective, reconnecting with self, and choosing relationships rooted in consistency, respect, and emotional safety. It takes time, but it is possible. Reclaiming a sense of sanity after trauma bonding begins with separating perception from conditioning. What felt real during the relationship may have been shaped by survival instincts, emotional manipulation, and repeated distortion of truth. Rebuilding reality isn't about having all the answers. It's about allowing space for clarity to return, piece by piece. This process often starts with simple validation. What you felt was real. What hurt you was not your fault. Acknowledging those truths helps re-establish trust in your own mind. From there, it's possible to rebuild a sense of inner coherence, a worldview where emotions, thoughts, and experiences align more honestly. Support is key, whether through therapy, trusted relationships, or trauma-informed education. Reconnecting with grounded perspectives can help undo the confusion left by cognitive dissonance. Over time, the need to justify or explain away harmful behavior fades. Rebuilding also involves redefining identity. Without the distortions of the trauma bond, space opens up to rediscover personal values, boundaries, and desires, not shaped by fear or dependence, but by self-respect and clarity. This is not a return to who you were before. It's the emergence of someone more aware, more grounded, and more free to live in alignment with what's true. If you've experienced the confusion and emotional strain of a trauma bond, know that you're not alone, and that clarity is possible. Understanding the psychological patterns at work is a powerful first step toward change. If this video helped you see something more clearly, consider subscribing for more content on trauma, healing, and emotional awareness. Feel free to share your thoughts or experiences in the comments. Your voice might help someone else feel less isolated. Thank you for watching, and take care as you continue moving toward greater understanding and self-trust.